Hi everyone, my name is Nate, and I just wanted to welcome you to my new YouTube channel. What this channel is going to consist of is mainly about movies. I'm a big film buff, and I'm a big collector of movies, DVDs, Blu-rays, other things like that. And so I wanted to start up a channel where I was able to express my views about film, show you guys different films that I have in my collection, and see where it goes moving forward. And so this is my inaugural video, and we'll see how it goes from here. And I wanted to start out with my first video talking about a film company that I've become a big fan of the past few years. And that film company is called the Criterion Collection. And for those of you who don't know what the Criterion Collection is, it is a film restoration company who takes some of the most perfect or obscure works of art in world cinema and restores them to their best quality that they believe the director of the original film wanted it to look like. Whether that be update it so there's no scratches, or enhance the color, or do a new audio video transfer. This company is fantastic. They take some of those movies that you have probably never heard of, or even some more mainstream ones, and they're able to resurrect them and bring them back to life. So what I wanted to do is go through my entire Criterion collection. It's not very big, it's only about 19 titles, and just give you guys a quick review on each film and let you guys know which ones are my favorites, which ones I don't really care for, and see how it goes from there. And at the end, I actually will have a special package opening. I just got 2 Criterions in from Amazon, 2 new titles that I don't own, so I was really excited to get these. And yeah, so let's get to it. I've only got 19 titles, but I will hopefully go through and give you guys a good look at what the collection has to offer, and maybe introduce you guys to the Criterion Collection, and maybe get you guys to delve into it as much as I have. So let's get started. So the first Criterion, I have these all in alphabetical order, by the way. So they do go in by spine number, of course, but I like to keep mine alphabetized, so I will be going in alphabetical order. So the first one that I have is The Breakfast Club, directed by John Hughes. This film is arguably, to me, it's the best coming-of-age movie there is. So it's basically about these 5 outcasts who spend a Saturday in detention, and they are all outcasts, like I said, so they all have something different to offer. There's the criminal, the basket case, the popular girl, the brains, and the jock. So they all come together. They don't really care for each other at first. There's some back and forth that you would expect in some high school drama, but it's really nice and really pleasant to see how it plays off, and it's a really heartwarming story once you get into it. This is one of my favorite movies of all time, as well as in the Criterion Collection. I was very happy when this came out, so I knew I had to pick it up on the collection. So the next film that I have is a personal favorite of mine. It's from director Terrence Malick, and that's Days of Heaven. This movie, to some people, can be considered kind of slow. And Terrence Malick is a very unique director. He has a lot of long and elaborate wide shots. Some of his stories are a little more complex, but there is no doubt that his movies have a pleasant look to them. They're beautiful to look at. You might not be as enticed in the story, but he shoots it in such a way that you cannot look away from the screen. So that is why Days of Heaven is a recommendation of mine, because it's only an hour and a half long, so it's something that you can fly through really quick, and you guys might like the taste of his movies, because it's definitely an acquired taste. There are some movies of his that are really long, but they're always beautiful to look at. So that's Days of Heaven. The next one is from director David Lynch from 1977. One of the more obscure movies in the Criterion Collection, and that movie is Eraserhead. And I didn't know much about this movie when I first got it. I'd heard of it, and this was the first movie I ever added in my collection. And so I was just open to new things, because that's what the Criterion Collection is basically about, is delving into a world that it's all new world cinema. Like, you don't exactly know what each thing's gonna bring you. And this title is one of my favorites, and when I first watched it, the thought went through my mind of, this is either the best movie I've ever seen or the worst movie I've ever seen. It's definitely an oddball. It's in black and white, and it's from the 70s. So it's an acquired taste, like the Criterion collection itself and the films that it brings out, but it's definitely one worth the watch. There's some deep, dark themes behind it, and some of the scenes and some of the materials definitely graphic and disturbing, but if you're into that kind of thing, I definitely recommend Eraserhead. Next is from director Wes Anderson, his first animated film, Fantastic Mr. Fox. I'll admit, when I first started watching Wes Anderson films, I wasn't exactly sure what to think of them. They're very symmetrical. It looks like you're watching a visual pop-up book being told. And that's even with his live action films. So when I got this, I was like, well, let's see how it does with animation. And I thought this movie was really good animated wise, as well as the Wes Anderson style. Very symmetrical, very goofy. It could be watched as a child's film, but there are also some very adult-like elements that only adults would notice, because there's some things with alcohol and some sex-related things, so stuff like that which only adults would pick up, but it's light enough, to me, I believe, that even kids could watch it. So definitely one of Wes Anderson's best movies to me, and definitely worth the pickup in Criterion. Next one's from director Alfred Hitchcock, and it's Foreign Correspondent from 1940, and it's basically about this guy who goes overseas as a journalist, and he witnesses a tragedy happen in a large group of people, and he's trying to figure out who these people are that have done this and trying to catch the criminal who did it. It's an older movie, like I said, from 1940, so it's a little slow, but it's one of those Hitchcock thrillers where you stay till the end, you want to see how it plays out. One of my least favorite in Criterion, I still enjoyed the movie. It was just one of those movies that was a little slow and it took a little while to pick up. Yeah, that's Foreign Correspondent. So the next one is a silent film starring Harold Lloyd, and that's The Freshman. Sorry if you can't see that. The Freshman. And this came out in 1925. It has all the information on the back, which is a great thing about Criterion. And this movie is very funny. This one's about a young guy who just graduated high school, and he's looking to go off to the university and become a superstar. He wants to be part of the football team. He wants to be the guy on campus. Granted, Harold Lloyd's character is kind of a dub. He's the goofy guy who has the big dreams, and other people don't take him very seriously. But he works hard. He's one of the hardest working characters in like silent film, as well as Harold Lloyd, who was one of the main three guys, as well as Chaplin and Buster Keaton in the silent era, to make his characters well known. And this movie just shows the heart that he has and willing to make his way to the top, whether he embarrasses himself or tries to make friends, tries to find love. It's one of those movies that even though it's silent, you can still relate to the themes. So that's The Freshman. Next one is one of my favorite Criterion releases, and it is by Charles Chaplin, The Great Dictator. And the thing I like about this is if you look at it, it's kind of hard to see, but if you take it and you rotate it, you got Hitler and you got Chaplin right there. And that's basically, the movie is about Charlie Chaplin's character who was in World War II, and he got amnesia, so he doesn't remember anything from World War II. And it's two storylines going back and forth where Chaplin is a barber, a Jewish barber, who is being harassed by the Nazi police in his town. He doesn't know why, because he's had amnesia this whole time. And the other storyline is also Chaplin, except he is playing a Hitler-type character, which is Dictator, I think it's Hinkle is his name. Yeah, he's a Tomanian dictator, and his last name's Hinkle. So he's basically a Hitler-type character. And you see how these two characters act. And it's a war movie, but it's also very satirical and it's very funny. Some of the rants that Chaplin goes on is just gibberish. Like, it's not actually German. There's moments where he'll just be talking really fast and then you'll hear him say the word banana or something to know that he's not being serious. So The Great Dictator is definitely one of Chaplin's more controversial films, but also one of his best. And I think it was one of his first into talkies, because he stuck with silent movies for a long time. So that's A Great Dictator. The next one is a documentary style film I say that kind of weird. It has a documentary feel to it, but it's definitely a movie. There's a story with it about one of the greatest bands of all time, the Beatles, and that's A Hard Day's Night. This movie, it's in black and white from 1964, and it's definitely really cool to see how this film plays out because it stars the actual Beatles, George Harrison, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and Ringo Starr, and you see how they handle Beatlemania just as it's about to rise from England and them going to America before one of their first like big live TV performances. And it's cool because you witness them at a young age, so they have the same problems. They are becoming super famous very fast, and you see them want to sneak away and have a little fun when they know that business is business and they can't get away from it, but they're also young guys who are just trying to go out and have a good time. So it's definitely an enjoyable film, and if you like music, you will definitely hear some of the greats from the Beatles. The next one is a horror film called The Innocents, and I say horror film, but I'm big into horror movies. I didn't find it very scary myself, but it is definitely atmospheric. Like some of those movies that people will say, like Session 9 is very atmospheric, and The Conjuring has atmosphere in some of those scenes in the house. The Innocents is definitely atmospheric because it's about a woman who goes to be forget what the word is. She's to be a governess for these two kids at this mansion because their uncle simply can't take care of them. He doesn't have the time. So she goes out there, and this is from 1961, and it's in black and white. And she goes out and is going to take care of these two kids, but there's things going on in the house, some supernatural type things that she can't quite explain, and she's not sure why they're happening or if what she's seeing is real and if the kids have something to do with it. So it's kind of twisty, supernatural, but definitely very tense sometimes. It's definitely one of those ones that if you watch it in the dark, it makes it a lot creepier because the Criterion does a good job at making the blacks pop out. So watching it in the dark, especially in black and white, makes it very intense. My next one is a favorite of mine because it's from one of my favorite directors, George Romero, and this one was released just recently on the Criterion Collection, and it's Night of the Living Dead by George Romero, 1969 masterpiece. 1968, sorry. And everyone knows what this movie is, even if they've never seen it. Night of the Living Dead, the original zombie movie. It's where people get the idea for their stereotypical zombies, and it's just about this group of people that get locked up. They lock themselves in, actually, in a farmhouse, and they basically just try to fight to survive. There was a remake from 1990 directed by Tom Savini, which I tend to like a little more, but it's definitely nice to have this one, especially on Criterion, because they really took their time to make this pop. A lot of great special features, which all these movies have, which is definitely why the Criterion collection is worth it. So yeah, that's Night of the Living Dead. The next one I picked up recently is Passion of Joan of Arc. And now this is on IMDb's like top 100 of all time. And it's a silent movie. It's from 1928. And I've heard great things about it because I've been trying to get into more silent films. And so I was like, okay, I've seen some silent films. I hadn't seen most of Chaplin's like famous silent films. And so I'd heard about this one and heard it was the best portrayal of the trial of Joan of Arc, who was burned at the stake because she was hearing voices from God and seeing Saint Michael and stuff like that. Directed by Carl T.H. Dreyer, who also directed the famous vampire movie from the 1920s, which is also a silent film. This movie, I watched it in complete silence, which is one of the options on here, because it does give you the option of different soundtracks that you can listen to the movie to. But I wanted to watch it in silence because that's the way the director intended it. So I popped it in, and it was very slow. It was hard to follow sometimes, but it's only 81 minutes, so it's a quick watch. I would definitely recommend watching it with a soundtrack because it'll make the time fly by so much more, and it might add a little bit more to the emotion. But I can understand why this is one of the best ever. Great performance by Renee Falconetti is her name, and she does a great job at just portraying emotion with just her face and some of the reactions she has to the whole situation. Great silent film right there. The next one is a comedy from 1940, and this is a clash of some of Hollywood's greats. It's got Cary Grant, Katharine Hepburn, James Stewart, and those names right there made me buy it just at random. It wasn't even in contention when I was going to buy a movie that day until I saw who was in it, and I bought it. It was a Philadelphia Story. It's basically about this wife and husband. They get divorced, and so the wife eventually ends up getting remarried, and the ex-husband wants to basically kind of get back into her life, so he gets a couple photographers and reporters. James Stewart's character is one of them, and Cary Grant's the ex-husband, and they basically go back into Katharine Hepburn's life and try and see what she's doing before the wedding. And it's a slapstick type of comedy. It's just these witty characters, and it's a love triangle. It's one of those things, even though it's from 1940, it's so relevant just because of the slang terms and just some of the goofiness. And I think James Stewart won an Oscar for best supporting actor in this movie. And so this is definitely one of my favorites because it definitely made me chuckle, especially in like the first 20 seconds. There's a funny scene, it doesn't spoil anything, where Cary Grant's packing his suitcases in the car, and Katharine Hepburn's standing at the door sneering at him, and he just kind of walks up to her and grabs her face and then pushes her onto the floor, and just the music that plays along with it makes it really funny. And so I was chuckling in the first 20 seconds, but it's definitely one to pick up if you're into like old comedies with superb acting. Like, each character is flawless in this movie. The next one is also by Alfred Hitchcock, and it's the only film of his to win Best Picture, and that's Rebecca. When I read the back of it, it talks about it being very dreamlike and with a lot of horror elements. And it's not horrific at all. It's more of a thriller, like figuring out what is actually going on in this home of Laurence Olivier, who plays kind of a distraught millionaire who's alone and gains friendship and eventually love with Joan Fontaine, and brings her out to his house, Manderley, the Manderley mansion. And so she goes there as his new wife, and the people there are kind of getting used to her. She's getting used to being the head of a house. Laurence Olivier's ex-wife, who died, her stuff's everywhere. And so Joan Fontaine's character's having a hard time getting used to it, knowing that she has to live up to this goddess, and she has a hard time figuring out how to handle it, but then also how she died, and them trying to figure that out for sure. So Rebecca is definitely one of those strange ones, but it won Best Picture, and I agreed that it should have. It looks great. It's in black and white, but it's definitely worth the watch. The next one's a foreign film. It's Solaris, directed by Andrei Tarkovsky. This movie is one of those ones that I don't know if I'll ever watch again. It's a sci-fi thriller, and it's about this guy who he's talking to like the Russian NASA basically, and how he's going to go up to the space station, and they're like traveling to all these planets, and he goes up to investigate because they're not getting any readings back from the crew that was up there. And he goes up there and they're all dead, and they're trying to figure out like what is going on this journey and why is all this stuff happening. It's definitely a long one. It's 2 hours and 30 minutes, so it's definitely a long wait, and it's in Russian, which is, to me, is just a little bit of a bore because it took a while for stuff to build up, but it's worth the watch. It's Tarkovsky. He's one of the most famous directors of all time because he's in the collection a lot. But this is definitely one of the slower ones, which I'll probably eventually watch again just to see if I got it right. But yeah, that's Solaris. The next one is another Terrence Malick film, and this might be my favorite one. And it's The Thin Red Line, a very, very underrated war movie. I thought this movie was fantastic. Sean Penn is in this, who plays a great he's a badass. He goes into war not really worried about dying. He's just there to do the job. And I believe Nick Nolte is also in this. Elias Koteas and Woody Harrelson. I forgot Woody Harrelson's in this. And this basically takes place, I believe, at Guadalcanal during World War II. And it's a very gritty war movie. Not Saving Private Ryan level, but definitely hardcore like that. But there's also more of a like touching story of these characters trying to survive, as well as it's Terrence Malick, so it's beautifully shot. Some of the scenes where they're underwater swimming before they go to battle, and even some of the forest scenes are definitely hardcore, and you can definitely see Malick seep through with this one. A lot of great special features. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes, but it definitely flies by because you get attached to the characters, and it's a high-paced war movie with great story. So if you like war movies and you like films that have a great story and you get attached to the characters, Thin Red Line is definitely worth the pickup. Now the next one might be the best transfer that I've seen on the collection so far. For those of you who have seen the movie La La Land, this movie, Damien Chazelle, the director of La La Land, got a lot of influence from by director Jacques Demy. It's The Umbrellas of Cherbourg. And it's a beautiful love story of this young girl who works in an umbrella shop with her mother, falls in love with a guy in the military, or he works in a mechanic shop, and then he goes off to war, and so they instantly fall in love, and there's a lot of, oh, what am I gonna do while you're gone, and I'm gonna miss you, and are things gonna last, are you gonna come back to me? It's definitely a great watch if you like La La Land, and it's a great movie by itself too, even if you've never seen La La Land. I'm just saying that because they compare really well, especially when it gets towards the end where you kind of see the climax of their lives and how things end up. But Umbrellas of Cherbourg, it looks beautiful. The colors pop. That's one thing that I've noticed with Jacques Demy's movies is that I think they're mostly musicals. This movie's all musical. All the regular talking dialogue is a musical, but it doesn't pull you out. I was expecting that, but it keeps you sucked in because you can see how the story is sung and see how the characters react. So a definite beautiful movie. It's in French, so it's a little more, to me, it's a more pleasant language to watch a foreign film in than like in Russian or something, but it's definitely worth the watch because I heard great things. So Umbrellas of Cherbourg. Next one's from director David Cronenberg, one of his most obscure movies, Videodrome. I love the set with this. It looks like an old school VHS tape. Long Live the New Wave, which is a big theme in that movie, where this guy is a TV director who is trying to find the newest, most obscure content to put on the air. And he basically is getting into like snuff films, and for those of you who know what those are, it's people who get like murdered or killed on live TV, and he puts those videos on. He's trying to find the most like shocking thing so that he can get ratings, and then he eventually gets like just sucked into this whole hallucination and this journey, and it gets to the point where there's like the real gruesome, he has the VHS opening in his stomach and someone puts the VHS tape in. It's very grotesque and very out there, but that's what you can expect from Cronenberg. If you've seen The Fly, if you've seen Naked Lunch, any of those movies, this has definitely got Cronenberg written all over it, but it's definitely great. It's got a good transfer, and it's definitely a great release because it has all these colors and it's got a lot of special features too, and it's only an hour and a half, so if you like Cronenberg and horror, Videodrome's a good one. The next one is a coming-of-age movie directed by Sofia Coppola, and it's The Virgin Suicides. And I had never heard of this up until recently, and I've become a big fan of coming-of-age movies like Dazed and Confused, Stand By Me, all movies like that, Edge of 17 that came out in 2017, that have something to offer. It shows you the inside lives of these kids. This one's definitely a darker take. It is about 5 young sisters, all I think from ages 13 to 18 or 13 to 17. They're all 1 year apart, and something happens to one of them, and you see how the whole family reacts to it. How the family's very sheltered, the parents are very protective of everyone, and it stars a young Kirsten Dunst before she became really big. There's not a whole lot of young stars in this one. Oh, Josh Hartnett, who you guys know, I know him from Halloween H2O. He's in this as like the young stud who tries to get one of the sisters. So this was one of his earliest, might have been his first role. But this one's definitely worth the watch. It is not your everyday like happy coming of age movie, because there is a dark twist to it. I'm not going to get into it, but it is very dark and I wasn't expecting it, but it made me appreciate it a lot more. So The Virgin Suicides, it's come out recently. Came out in 1999, and this release just came out within the last month or two. So definitely pick this one up if you're into the more dark side of a teenage life. The last one of the ones that I own now is I believe in either it's Australian or from New Zealand, somewhere in that area. It's Walkabout. I knew nothing about this. I just picked this up at Barnes & Noble during one of the sales, and it's obscure. It's about this father who takes his two kids out into the middle of, I believe, the Australian outback, and he just leaves them for dead. And they end up trying to survive, where they're walking through the hills and trying to get water, trying to spare off as much food as they have, and they end up coming across a young Aborigine boy who's on this walkabout where he goes alone on search for himself, and they come in contact with him and they learn off one another. He teaches them how to survive, how to hunt, where to get clean, where to do all of these things to survive, while they also teach him some of the new slang and some of the things about technology and other things like that they are not used to, because he's part of the Aborigine tribe who don't have the luxuries that these kids have. So they have something to offer one another. It's definitely slow, but it's a beautiful movie because it all takes place out in the outback. And so some of the scenes are just gorgeous, but it's definitely worth the watch. So I ordered two, got two in today. So let's open up the first one and see which one it is. I know what they are, but I don't know which one is coming out first, which one's next. All right. So the first one, this one I've been very excited for. This one is another Charlie Chaplin film, and it's my favorite Chaplin film, and that's Gold Rush. It came out in 1925 and then was re-released in 1942. And it's about Chaplin's tramp character, his famous tramp character, and he goes to Alaska in search for a fortune, like all those people did during the Alaskan Gold Rush. And he comes in with two goofy characters in this cabin in the middle of a storm, and they have to live with each other. Definitely one of Chaplin's greatest movies, and I believe he was even quoted in saying that this is the film that he wanted to be best remembered for. And out of City Lights, Modern Times, The Kid, which are all fantastic silent films, this one stands out to me just because it's so goofy and so funny, and I'm really excited to see this transfer. I know what this one is. This one's really obscure, and I'm really excited to check this one out. This is a Japanese movie called House. I had seen this at my local Bull Moose, which is like our DVD, books, music store, and I saw this a while back, didn't know anything about it, didn't pick it up. And then I learned what it was about, and I love obscure horror movies. And this is a horror comedy, and so once I learned what it was about, I was like, it could be worth it. I'm open to trying new and obscure things. Like some of the movies that I described in the collection, like Eraserhead and whatnot, are all weird and out there movies, and I knew that this was one of like the best of weird and out there movies. Don't know what to expect from it. Plus the artwork on it looks fantastic. So I will definitely be popping these in as soon as possible, because someone like me who got into the Criterion collection very quickly, I have learned to appreciate what they are doing in cinema. So that is my entire Criterion collection. I think that brings me up to 21 films now, which is I've seen guys with a lot more, like Logan Toxic and Jeff from Films at Home. They have huge Criterion collections, so I'm hoping to build my way up there. But thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you like videos like this, little Blu-ray collection updates, definitely give this video a thumbs up, leave some comments, because I'm definitely willing to take some suggestions from you guys to help get this channel off the ground. If there's anything else you'd like to see, if there's something I can change, please let me know, and I will see you guys later. Bye.